All right. So, greetings everyone. Welcome to the 13th edition of the Online Education Leadership Forum panel discussion series focused on transforming education for human flourishing. Thank you so much for investing your time with us on a weekday. My name is Aryan Salman and I'm the moderator for this panel discussion. Today we have a stellar panel that will discuss the question, what role do parents play in the transformation of education in our series entitled Education in the Times of Corona? We will be discussing the role of parents and the opportunities they have in catalyzing and contributing to the transformation of education. What is the desirable role that parents should play? How should they navigate through this landscape or this new landscape of education online? And what is their role in transforming education for human flourishing during and beyond COVID-19? These are some of the questions that we'll be discussing during the panel discussion. Also, we'll be sharing relevant and related resources with you within 72 hours of this live broadcast. So check out the event page on our website, globalcitizenshipfoundation.org. After 72 hours, or follow us on our social media profiles to receive the latest updates on the same. In the previous 12 editions of the OELF, we explored the various dimensions of education in the times of Corona and beyond. The recordings of the previous 12 panel discussions and the live broadcast of this panel discussion are available both on our website and on our social media channels, including YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So join us on our social media pages and be part of our current and future initiatives. To receive your certificate of participation, please fill in the special certificate request form that will be made available right at the end of the panel discussion on the respective platforms, that is Zoom, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We hope to dispatch your certificates by August 27 of this year. So I hope you will continue to support us by actively sharing your ideas, suggestions, and feedback, and help us improve the way we serve you and boost our efforts in advancing the discourse on transforming education for human flourishing. As you know, we continue to live in an increasingly challenging and uncertain times with enormous changes and disruptions to our lives and our professions. It is a moment for us to assume active global citizenship and support those in need. Having said that, I would also like to take this moment to mark a minute of silence for those who have lost their lives to the pandemic, the grieving individuals and the families, and in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, we ring the bell to thank and honor the healthcare workers, our educators, and others on the front line who are carrying out essential roles selflessly, continuing their day-to-day duties inside and outside the home in support of us all. Thank you. The Online Education Leadership Forum was started with the objective to provide a platform for educational leaders to shape, empower, influence, and advance the discourse on, and be a springboard aiding action towards transforming education for human flourishing. Parents, from the time of birth to adolescence and beyond, contribute significantly to the growth and development of a child. Every parent, regardless of their background, wants the best for their children. However, the roadmap that they take and the way they view academic learning and success may be different. These views that parents hold can have a significant impact and influence both the quality of education and the way the child perceives education and beyond. We often talk about the role of educators, school leaders, schools, education boards, and governments in the transformation of education. Today, through this panel, we would like to put on the spotlight the role of parents as one of the key players in the development of the whole child and in the transformation of education for human flourishing. This panel will also highlight how parents can enhance, influence, catalyze, and support the quality and standards of education. If we are to transform education for human flourishing, it is crucial that we recognize the role of parents and engage them in this transformation. How effectively parents recognize their own roles in being a game changer in this pursuit will determine how effective we are at transforming education for human flourishing and indeed in ensuring that we capture this moment to truly revolutionize education. Through the Education in the Times of Corona online series, the Global Citizenship Foundation and its Council for Global Citizenship Education are committed to supporting school leaders and educators by connecting experts, practitioners, and educational leaders from across the globe to discuss and share ideas, best practices, and perspectives to navigate and lead through this crisis. So our goal today is, whatever your role is in the education sector, that you come away with something, a new idea, a fresh perspective, a new strategy that you can apply to be more successful at doing what you're doing best while ensuring that you contribute to the development of the whole child. That is so crucial in ensuring and in our efforts of transforming education for human flourishing. So here's the format to give you an idea of what to expect. First, we'll take a few minutes to introduce our awesome panelists from the European Union, Australia, and India. Then I'll kick off the conversation by opening the floor to the panelists. In the second half of our time today, we'll open the floor to give you an opportunity to directly ask specific questions to the panelists by either posting your questions on the chat platforms or virtually raising your hands by pressing the reaction button on the bottom of your screen on Zoom. Also, please feel free to share your thoughts and ideas in the chat sections anytime during the discussion and create a learning and engaging experience for all. The idea is to navigate the present and upcoming opportunities, issues, and challenges together to be able to transform education for human flourishing. Sounds good? Great. Let's get started with the panel introductions. It is my pleasure to welcome Arya Krauchenberg, Project Coordinator of the European Parents Association, a member body of over 50 parents associations from 31 countries in Europe, representing more than 150 million parents. Arya has earlier served as the president at European Parents Association. Additionally, she is the vice president of LLLP, that is the Lifelong Learning Platform, a group of 43 networks active in the field of education, and is also the executive committee member of OIDEL. I take great pleasure in welcoming Professor Sudha Ravishankar, assistant professor at KC College, India. Professor Sudha has been teaching advertising, journalism, and media theory for nearly 20 years at prominent colleges across Mumbai. She is particularly passionate about communication, both as a theory and in practice. As a parent to a specially abled child, she is empathetic not just from an educator's standpoint, but also a parent's point of view. It is my deepest pleasure to welcome Sushant Kalra, the founder of Parwarish, India. As a parenting and teacher coach, he has trained over 20,000 parents and 25,000 teachers across the world. Also, Sushant has been a 3-time TEDx speaker. He's a recipient of the Education Innovator Award at the 5th Educational Leadership International Conference conferred by the Council for Global Education USA and the Center for Innovation in Education USA. And he's also the recipient of the Kenneth Cole Foundation's Courageous Class Award. I take immense pleasure in welcoming Dr. Rosina McAlpine, the Chief Executive Officer of Win-Win Parenting, a parenting expert, author, and multi-award-winning university educator and researcher for over 30 years. She has worked on research-based parenting programs that are being delivered nationally and internationally in partnership with socially responsible employers to support families and workplaces to thrive. I take great pleasure in welcoming Dr. Amrita Vohra, the Director of Education at the GEMS Education India, and she is the Executive Principal at GEMS International School, Gurgaon. She has been an active member of the GEMS Global Education team in Dubai. Dr. Amrita is a certified program leader for Cambridge education programs for teachers and school leaders, In the past, she has worked with Educom Solutions, Global Classroom, and Opportunity International. Now we have something exciting and new for everybody in the audience. So we have three questions, all clubbed into one, uh, and we seek your response during the discussion. And the best three responses will be highlighted at the end of the panel discussion. So to share the screen with you, uh, so that you can see the question, I'll just take this moment to share the screen. All right, so here we go. So the question is, how has the perspective on education evolved during the pandemic from the lens of a student, an educator, and a parent? So this is the question. You can take a screenshot of this, or I could also share this with you in the chat section. So this question, so we really look forward to responses from all of you in the audience. Now I request, now I yield the floor to Sushant, and I request him to make his initial remarks.
Thanks, Aryan. Really, thanks first for setting this up. It's like really great to have talking to the entire world at the same time, and talking about a very critical element of the parents' participation. So it's not that the parents were not as important as they were before the pandemic. I think the pandemic it just accentuated the need. So really, thanks for doing that and bringing in parenting in education. I think it's one of the very, very critical element which somewhere gets ignored, somewhere does a partnership doesn't get formed. But before I go into parenting, the first thing which I really want each one of you and each one of the persons who's listening to us to really get the whole space. So pre maybe February, March, the world was a different ball game. From March onwards, we are actually into a very, very different ball game. It's like the third world war right now. So each one of us, like 7.5 billion people of the world, are against one single enemy, an unknown, invisible enemy. We don't know how to fight that enemy, and we're all trying to fight. And I think the first time in our life, in our parents' life, and in our children's life, the whole survival, we all know life is uncertain, but that thing right in our face, I think none of us have faced before. Our parents haven't seen it before. So really, my request for each one of you would be to really acknowledge that we've been in a space where we don't know what will happen. We have really no idea what is going to happen, including the experts. So really, this is a space where we need to acknowledge ourselves and be with that the ball game we are playing right now is very different. So if you knew a ball game before, this is completely different. So coming back to how the question that how parents and have a very critical role to play in education of children and thriving of human beings is that what this pandemic has brought up is because the children have suddenly had to study everything online from their homes. The teachers were thrown into getting into online teaching. Nobody was trained to do that, but they had to start off absolutely afresh without even knowing how to do it. They were thrown on the what I say is the deep end of the pool and said, "Go swim," and then support children to swim. And you had the parents along with you to support. So the first thing which needs to come as the totality is that the intention of every teacher in this world, every educator in this world, is the best of the child. No questions asked. Like even in the dreams, they would be talking about how I can support every child, any child in the world. And if I ask any parent of the world, whether they're capable, incapable, they're literate, illiterate, first generation learners, doesn't matter. Their intention is also exactly the same. So if the intent of every parent and every child, every teacher is exactly the same, the first thing we need to realize and start working on that we are in the same team. If I want you to win and the other person wants you to win, that means that we all are in together. So I've been getting a lot of calls from teachers saying that parents are disturbing and parents are judging us, evaluating us, disturbing us in the classes. But the first thing we need to do as an educator and as a parent to really get together and say that we are in the same team. And then I propose to teachers that imagine that there are earlier the role of the parent from the school used to be maximum drop the child at the gate and come back and maybe meet once in a while in the PTMs. But right now, the parent is right there in the classrooms. So rather than looking at them as a disturbance, can we together, the parents and educators, together come that yes, we are all in the same game. Can we be support structures? So rather than seeing that one educator is teaching 40 children, 30 children in a classroom, but if this is 40 children plus 40 support people right there, the ball game suddenly changes. So the whole thought, the first thing which I would want every parent to and the educator together to do is like really have a dialogue where you can start talking from intentions and build it together. So we can build it together and makes our life and child's life far, far, far easier. So that's one thing which I would say that's where the contribution comes in. The second thing, which again, if I really thank this pandemic for, is like it's highlighted the entire need or the entire objective of education to move from academics to more of competencies and life skills based. We've all been saying that academics has a value. I'm not saying academic is no value. I'm not even saying that knowledge is no value, but I'm saying there is, given whatever is happening in the world, knowledge economy was there 30 years back. It's 30 years old economy. Uh, Internet, the smartphones have actually brought knowledge into your hands free of cost, available as fast as you want, actually faster than a human brain. So can we move the education, the purpose of education towards competencies and life skills? So I got a joke a few weeks back which said a group of students talking to a teacher saying, will the Pythagoras theorem help me cope up with the COVID situation? The teacher says no. So the answer, the question which the students ask them is, then why did you teach us? Looks very odd, looks very difficult, but it started off a conversation in our head, and I request every educator and every parent to start that conversation in your head that life is not going to be the same. These children who are in schools today are going to be in their productive life maybe 10, 15 years hence, 20 years hence. Will life, how would world be? We have no idea. And this pandemic has actually shown us that we really don't have an idea. We were thinking we have an idea, but this has certainly shown one small issue and the entire world shifts. And we have no idea how the world is going to look like in 2030, 2040. And these children are going to be the forerunners there. So can we shift the entire focus of, can we use education as a medium versus education as the end? So can we move it to competencies and life skills? We'll be talking about it a lot, but now is the time when it's come on the fore that let's only focus on that, because that's going to stay with them forever in their life. And third very critical role which I say for parents is communication, of being a confidant. And again, thanks to this pandemic, because the children are only with their parents right now. Yeah, teachers are there, educators are there, friends are there, but they're online. The only people they are interacting with, humans, like physical touch, physically, is their parents, is the parents only. So there's a need for physical, emotional, mental support, which a child is looking for from the parent is looking from the child, that how the parent and child can really come together like this. So that is what is critical. And a couple of things which you said, what 3 things should a parent not be doing? We all believe, we all come from a space that we are the strong one, and we should have a strong face in front of our children. We should be the emotionally stronger ones, the mentally stronger one, and we need to project that to our children. I think this is the biggest mistake I would say every adult is making in the current times. These times are not easy. These times are very, very tough for each one of us. This is the time when we need to build that vulnerable self of ourselves and take it away. The mask which we normally wear in front of our children, that we are strong and we are the one, we need to take that off and really talk about vulnerabilities. It's a paradox of life that if you're strong, you're strong. It's actually a paradox. When you become vulnerable, when you show off your vulnerability and you are okay with your vulnerabilities, that's the time when you're strongest. So it's fine, it's okay to talk about your vulnerabilities, that whatever you're going through, your spaces, your emotions, your mental health, you can actually start talking to your children about it, so that whatever they are going through right now, it's not easy. Children with 1,000 times more energy than us are bundled up in 4 walls for the last 4 months. They haven't seen their friends. They have not had any fun outside. They can't eat at the places they want to. They have not gone to places they want to. They can't do what they want to. and they've been with adults who don't even understand us. So it's like, can we be okay with our vulnerabilities, sharing our vulnerabilities with them so that they create a space where they can, and that will create the bond which I'm talking about. So uh, that is what we are talking about. And so these three things, our intention as an educator and a parent needs to be right there, the shift towards competencies and life skills, and you as a parent being a confidant. And that, I think every parent wants that, that if anything happens, if there is an issue, I want my child to come to me. So this pandemic is actually put it right up front for us to learn and really do it right now. So I would suggest these three things at the top of my mind for any parent and any educator.
Thank you so much, Sushant. I yield the floor to Dr. Amrita.
Thank you, Sushant, and thank you, Aryan. And although Sushant has said a lot of really useful and impactful things as always, the one thing that stands out for me personally as a mother and as an educator is this, this bond is the most critical thing, right? The child, the parent, and the teacher have to work in sync. If the parent and the teacher are talking to different things or are very, are poles apart in their opinions, we will do nothing but confuse the child together. So it's very that marriage of this is very key. So that has always been there. It's nothing to do with COVID. That has always been very important, and therefore schools have had parent engagement programs and so on and so forth, various ways in which schools have been connecting with parents. What the pandemic has done essentially, it has brought the classroom really present every minute, every second of the classroom in the household. So some parents are very interested. They have a lot of time on hand. And so they're sitting right there observing minutely every little detail. And then when you do that, you will naturally start judging as well sometimes. And sometimes you will also start appreciating at the same time the kind of effort that goes into what you thought was a very simple thing to do, teaching a few children. Now it's right there out in the open. Another thing that has happened is also all the fee issues and so on that has escalated with our economic uncertainty and other factors around. There has been a lot of battle within school and parent community wherein it's not really been a very happy one. So very often parents have simply ignored the efforts and said that, well, you know what, I can teach or I can homeschool. I'm sure Rosina will, bring that out more importantly later. But when we talk about I can homeschool, we have to remember a parent is anyway the very first teacher of the child for every child, right? But to be able to homeschool properly, we have to have the time and we have to have the training that is required to do that. We can't ignore that. Teaching is as much a profession as any other. We do a lot of home remedies for any kind of ailment for the child. Similarly, we can go out there and say, oh, there's nothing I can teach XYZ. But then why do we need teacher education so much? If we need that so much, then the parent who's homeschooling also needs that as much, right? And maybe more, because homeschooling also needs, it's a reimagining of education. So it'll require you to create a whole environment and the entire setup and connections and so on and so forth. So all of that, given all that, what's very important is also that the times are the only constant through all of this is change. We can't stop it. And the pace of change is phenomenal today. What will be there 5 years from now, we really probably cannot imagine. Children are no longer changing jobs. They are now changing careers every 5 years. So that change happened for our generation when people started moving from one job to another. Now the next change that is already going to be there for this generation is changing of careers altogether, and relearning, unlearning, rethinking, reflecting. All of these are very seminal skills. We've moved away from thinking to critical thinking, creative thinking, which has become Innovation is the key. You can't survive without that. It's become a survival skill. We've moved away from understanding and knowledge or knowledge economy, as Sushant put it, to understanding the subtext, the context, the pretext, the various perspectives. And we have, more importantly, very funny is the paradox that we are dealing with a generation of netizens. They are used to instant gratification, and given the way the world is transforming all around and at the speed at which it is, we really need to make them ready with resilience. What they're losing out on every front is the ability to be resilient. And this is the one ability they'll need the maximum. Of course, social, emotional intelligence and resilience. So these have to take the center stage, whether we talk of teaching at home or teaching at school. And the teacher and the parent have to collaborate in this effort. What is very key, what we cannot lose, and what has been there in Indian traditional culture, is respect for the guru, respect for the teacher. It has somewhere changed along the over the years. There's nothing wrong with sharing feedback. There is you need to do that. It's important to be critical, but also to remember that respecting the teacher and ensuring that your children respect the teacher is really at the center. If they don't respect the teacher, they'll not learn anything. Just one simple example is, if a child got less marks or did something wrong, the person who would be getting the reprimand for it would be the child when we were kids. Now, if a child does something wrong, doesn't live up to what were the expectations, the person who reprimanded is now the teacher, and the teacher and the school are more scared. That is where we need to really change the way things are and understand who ultimately is the one suffering in this whole thing. Learning has become self-directed. Children now own the process, no matter what schools do online. But very important to remember is that this is the skill again they require. Self-direction and self-discipline are very key. Learning how to learn is the only thing we really need to teach them. And metacognition is what they will carry forever with them. So let's focus on that and let's do it the right way.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amrita. Now I yield the floor to Dr. Rosina. Dr. Rosina? If you can...
You need to unmute.
Sorry, I was just unmuting myself. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I hope that everybody can understand my Australian accent. I'll try not to speak too fast. Now, I'd like to discuss this point from two perspectives. One, from a very holistic theoretical point, but also then secondly, from a very practical point. I was reading recently the United Nations policy brief, and it's on education during COVID-19 and beyond. And basically one of the statements that they made there was that preventing a learning crisis from becoming a generational catastrophe requires urgent action from all. And that's why I wanted to begin from this very large perspective. We can't just look to now. We need to look at this whole generation and their learning, because it's been disrupted. Our lives have been disrupted, and particularly our children, with being taken out of their social circles, their educational circles, their sporting circles. Everything's been changed for them. So when we say it requires urgent action from all, that includes the parents, the children, and many of you have mentioned that children need to be co-creators of their learning. It needs to be communities, teachers, government. This needs to be a very holistic perspective. And because it is so complex, some of you have mentioned disabilities, students with learning difficulties or disabilities. Where do we add that in? We've had lots of comments about parents who may be illiterate and cannot help with the academic side. And I noted how important it is that we address those issues, but also that as Dr. Amrita has said, it's about life skills as well, and Sushant as well. So I'd like to start with us really reimagining and thinking of education very holistically from all levels, from the child right through to governments and whole economies dealing with this. But then we have to go to the practical, the today. So we need those theoretical frameworks. We need that big picture thinking, but we also need to think, what are we going to do in our home today? The biggest thing I've seen with the thousands of parents I've been working with in Australia is that they have dropped self-care. And if we forget self-care as a parent, as a teacher, as a child, that's what we build life on. We build life on our physical, our mental, our social, our emotional, our spiritual well-being. If we don't have that, education comes after that. It comes from the platform of well-being. So from a practical perspective, I would ask parents to, I have a little mantra that I tell parents, if you think it's selfish to look after yourself, throw selfish in the rubbish, put it in the garbage. That's ridiculous. Try and be self-full. Take spiritual care, physical care, emotional care, psychological care. Be that leader for your child. So I don't want to take up too much time. I know everybody has such wisdom to offer, but I feel that the point we really need to make here is we need to work as teams at a big level to make this work successfully for the future of our generations of children who are coming. And in our homes, if we start with one thing, self-care, we will make such a big difference. From there, everything is possible.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rosina. I yield the floor to Professor Sudha.
Good evening, Aryan. Good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to be here on this panel, very august panel. And right now, a lot of things, good things have been said. So I really don't know what to say right now. But as a parent and a teacher, the role is very different. The line of demarcation is very different. Yes, I know that kids need to have life skills and everything. But the most important thing I want to bring across here is the fact of recognition of the fact that each child is different. Yes, all this, I believe that we need to understand spirituality. We need to imbibe that in our kids. And coming from India and coming from a place, and when I remember what my parents had done when I was in school and college, and my brother was in school and college, is the holistic treatment that we've had. Yes, we were supposed to do well in academics. No, but no compulsion. Wherever they thought there was a problem, it was addressed. We sat down, we sorted it out. So communication becomes very important. And in the Indian communication pattern, I like that very much. I'm sure people here who know communication skills will understand how we have this something called Sadharanikaran, where we simplify. Okay, every issue has to be broken down and simplified into so many things. And when we break that down, whether it be a communication between a parent and a teacher, whether it is a communication between the student and the teacher, and whether it's a communication between the teacher and the school as well, this comes very handy. Now, why am I taking this stand? Because in that particular thing, they say that there is a communication message, there is something that you can go on and so forth. But somewhere, we need to understand that each person, each recipient receives the message differently. We need to understand that. Yes, it is very, very important. I appreciate what all the speakers have said earlier. But to me, the crux of the matter is very important that communication should be strong, number one. Number two, it should understand how we need to address certain people and certain issues. That is because the mental makeup, the emotional well-being of the child is very important. And here is something that I would like to say, that the parents are responsible for that. Before we take a stand against the school, before we take a stand against the teacher, before we take a stand against anybody, we need to understand what we know about our child. Okay? Every child has certain pluses, every child has certain minuses. We need to accept. The question of acceptance is very, very important. Now, that, like you said earlier, Aryan said that what are the three things that we should do? I'm going to introduce that here. We need to be open. We need to accept whatever comes, change especially. None of us knew about this pandemic. We were just thrown into it. Okay, it was like going into a washing machine and not knowing how to get out. We're still there. Now, the other thing that I also like to understand is that of acceptance. I need to accept everyone for whom they are, whether we are ready or not. And it's a very difficult thing. I'm not asking everybody to do it, but as educators, we have to. I mean, I go into a class of 60 people, okay, and each child is in their own zone. Each child has their own advantages, but some are at a disadvantage. How do I accept that? All of us know. So that is something. And whatever criticism I may provide to the child or to the parent or whoever it is, it has to be positive criticism. We've all spoken about it. I mean, all my learned colleagues have spoken about it earlier, where they talked about how the school, the parent, and the child need to come together. And this pandemic in some way has made it possible. The second thing I also need to understand, what the other aspect is, yes, the government needs to be conducive. That is fine. But that is a separate space altogether. But I also need people from the society per se to understand that there are differences. Oh, your child goes to this school. Why are we ridiculing where the child goes? The society also needs to accept the fact that everyone, to each his own. So that is what I mean to say, that a child is different. Even in a family, the parents also need to understand, oh, my eldest daughter did this, or my youngest daughter did this, but my eldest son or my younger son or my younger daughter did not do it. No, because they're gifted differently. And that is something, that moral thing of acceptance becomes very important. And I will emphasize on this because this is becoming very clear during the pandemic. This is becoming very clear during the pandemic when all of them are together in the house. The parents feel that, oh, I wish my child went away. The child feels, I wish my parent went away. So to each his own, we have to understand that. And that is something I really want to address. And that is something that I really appreciate. And this is what we have. I wish to thank you, Adam. I yield the floor to the next speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Sudha. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Arya, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Aryan, for inviting me again to such an interesting panel discussion. And thank you to all my co-panelists for the very interesting statements that you made. And as the representative of the European Parents Association, we have, of course, been dealing with parental issues ever since our creation in 1985. So when we talk about the transformation of education, we generally have educational settings like kindergarten, preschool, and school in mind. Transformation in this formal education is very intimately linked to parental involvement in these sectors and in the changes that are taking place, but also the ones that we would like to see happen. Now, even before the pandemic, education systems differ a lot from one country to the next. And also the way and the degree of parental involvement vary quite a bit. That is often due to the historical development, but also to general political, cultural, religious, or ethnical circumstances. Therefore, and I think with the pandemic even more, we need to look very carefully at each single situation and take decisions based on the local circumstances rather than establish general rules of how to go about transforming what. Because this is actually the key question. what would we like to change, or what do we deem necessary to change, and how can this be done? I mean, the pandemic has exacerbated the strengths and the weaknesses of the systems. And there are some points that most probably apply to education systems all over the world that need to be addressed and that have come up even more through COVID-19. One of these issues is digitalization and media literacy. Making our children fit for living in a more and more digitalized world is certainly one of the main challenges that we all face. To distinguish fake news from facts, I mean, we have seen that with the pandemic, all the conspiracy theories that are around, to be able to counteract cyberbullying and hate speech that has also been exacerbated through the pandemic, to know how to use the new technologies peacefully and mindfully of others. That was also on the forefront of the problems that we were facing during the lockdown. Another issue is the climate change. It's now being put a bit back due to the pandemic, but it will stay around probably much longer than COVID-19. Climate change and sustainability are issues that also affect people around the globe and that need to be addressed from the very start to raise children who are aware of these challenges and get used to a different way of dealing with the environment, for example. We've seen with the pandemic that with less airplanes flying, with less pollution, that nature started to breathe again. We had less CO2 in the air and so on. So I think this is something good that came with the pandemic, and maybe we can continue working on that and transforming our education in the way that people understand that this is important. Health literacy is also one of the points that has been shown by the COVID-19 pandemic very clearly, that adopting proper behavior can save lives. But not only these hygienic measures are important, but also healthy eating habits, sufficient exercise, as well as preventive measures against drug consumption, smoking, alcohol, etc., that need to put into place and that need to be learned at school, but of course also in the home. So just taking these few examples of the societal challenges that we are facing, and they show the need for transformation. It is also clear that these can only be tackled successfully if all stakeholders work together. Parents as primary educators of their children, educators and teachers, school heads and other staff, as well as the community at large. Because we're not only talking about transforming the educational systems, but about a change in our society. That has been mentioned by one of my co-panelists, that nowadays we're not only going to change jobs, we're going to change careers. So there's a huge change going on in society. So schools and educational settings are an important part of the society, because this is where the preparation for participation in society, in democratic processes, in the labor market takes place, and where the foundation for lifelong learning is laid, that will enable children to cope with constant adaptation to new technologies, to be innovative, to be creative, and to find new solutions. It is very clear that this cannot be achieved by the educational settings alone, but that the home, respectively the parents and the family, play a decisive role in this process. And I think this has also been mentioned by Rosina before. It is absolutely imperative that we're all pulling at the same string and in the same direction, because otherwise it's the children that will suffer. We need to empower them to face these challenges in a positive way, by cooperating with teachers and educators and other staff to implement the new curricula that are already on the way in many countries, and to develop them if they're not. Parents can help bring these real-world problems into the school environment and support the change of curricula and the introduction of new subject matters and technologies. And one of the problems that we are facing with parents is that parents know about the changes that are happening around them, but they're hesitating to agree sometimes to the according changes at school level, because very often they want their children to learn exactly the same things that they have been learning, because that gives them a kind of security, the impression that they know what is going on and how things should be from their own experience, even if that experience was a negative one. But it's the only experience that they rely on, and they prefer that to something unknown. So this is one of the biggest challenges that we are actually facing, to convince parents that they can contribute to the change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arya, for your inputs and for your contribution to the discourse. Now we move on to the next segment of the panel discussion. So our panelists get exactly 30 seconds to ask a question and about 2 minutes to respond. So in the interest of time, I'll be using the bell in case we overshoot. So, so who'd like to go first with a question?
Okay, let me ask Rosina about if a quick tip, if you can give to people who are there listening to us about how they can take care of themselves, as you said, self-care, in a space where everybody is in their own zone. So if a quick tip will help everybody else.
That's a brilliant question. And so one of the things that we've been promoting is that just simple mindfulness activities. Number one, instead of multitasking, we unitask. We know that the brain can only do one thing at a time, but if we're trying to do 3 or 4, our brain is switching. So being very present to the cooking, to the child talking, to the education process, very present will be one aspect of self-care and reduce the stress. It's also simple to teach our children basic breathing processes so that if they're getting very upset, I love this one. When you've got very, very young children, you tell them to smell the flower. So it's very physical. Smell the flower and then blow out the candle so that they're breathing in and breathing out. So it's very, very simple. For older children, I like to teach them like a two-step or a process, like breathe in for 2, hold for 2, breathe out for 2, hold for 2. And for your older children, go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See how long you can hold it in. So simple mindfulness activities, breathing activities. And the last one would be really being aware of your body. One of the things that we do is hold a lot of tension and stress in our bodies. What if the children are running around and life is crazy at home? You just go to everyone, stop, wherever you are, just stop. Let's take a moment, move your neck side to side, release the tension, roll those shoulders, roll them forward, roll them back, take a deep breath in, shake those hands out, give your body a wiggle. And now let's stand still just for one moment and be present. And so little activities like that can really help our mental, our physical, our well-being, and ready for focus. I hope that's been helpful for toddlers right through to teenagers.
So toddler here is saying, smell the rose. I'm going to start.
I know, smell the rose. Awesome. May I take the opportunity to ask a question now?
Yes,
if
absolutely.
Thank you for that question. It was wonderful. I'd like to ask Arya, in your role that you take at the moment, what would you see as the most urgent first step? What would be the first step we could take right now that could make a difference?
Thank you very much for that question. As I said, it very much depends on the context. In some countries, really great programs are already in place that help parents to do good parenting at home. In other countries, that's absolutely not the case. I've been in a call today where we were discussing an upscaling of a program in Ireland that allows for home visits, where people come twice a week to families' homes with educational toys, show them what can be played, how it can be done, and help them to really create a challenging but supportive environment for children. We are trying to upscale that program because we really think that that would be a great thing for parents in all the countries. At the moment, many countries in Europe are busy preparing for the school reopening in September. And how this can happen, whether this will be a presential instruction or whether there will be blended learning or whether it will only be online. And also that will depend very much on the situation with the infections. So there's no one answer to the question that fits everybody. Yeah. And I would also warn against, in general, against this theory of one size fits all. As I said in my statement, the individual situation in each country and in each school and sometimes in each class is decisive. And what I would call for is more collaboration. And that was, I think, a general statement. Somebody said we all need to team up. I think that's what we really need to understand, that we are all in this together and that we can only make it work if we work as teams. Everybody recognizing the other's role and responsibility, but sharing that responsibility. I think that is one of the crucial points. And that actually, especially, I mean, I'm as you can maybe see from my background, I come from Austria. So that really needs a mind shift because that has not been there in our educational system at all. And I know that this is unfortunately true for many systems in Europe.
Thank you so much, Arya. Would you like to ask your question too?
If I get to ask a question, yes, I would like to ask Sushant. You talked about to build this together. Yeah? Do you have programs or projects that have worked successfully in building up these capacities together?
Yeah, and you're talking about the togetherness of educators and parents, right? Yeah, exactly. So we've been working with schools for a long time, but the program which we work with schools specifically is called the School Transformation Program, and the fulcrum is the teachers. So the first focus of that entire program is the environment around a child. So if you really look at the four elements, there are parents on one side, the teachers on one side, then there's a school management, and then there could be a board, which could be the education board of the country or the state or whatever. So if you look at them individually, all of them have the best interest of the child in mind. But if you speak to them individually, the parents would say that the teachers don't do this, teachers are not like that, they're not on our side, the school management is doing this, that. The education system is not the right one we have. If you go to the teachers, they have a similar story. If you go to the school management, they will have a similar story that, okay, my hands are tied, I can't do this, parents want this. So the first place the whole program works is that first thing which needs to work is the environment of a child. Till the time all these four elements and the fifth element being the child himself or herself, they are not together, doing anything over it will not create that space. So this foundation has to be very, very, very intense. So when we do that year-long program and year-long intervention with the school, this particular element takes about 3 months. And people are then talking to us that you came here to capacity build the teachers. I said capacity building of them, what they do in the classroom is fine. But first we need to build a solid foundation where all these 5 elements are working in tandem with each other, not against each other, because a lot of energies are wasted in managing the space. If that energy is taken away and that energy is utilized for the child, just imagine that all 4 of these elements are together with the child being together and they working together. It'll be phenomenal. So yes. And the whole thing starts from what I said earlier is the intention. At a level of intention, all of us want the same. But then we start a dialogue from an intention, keep it that in our forefront, and then working backwards from there. So I don't know if did I answer your question, or Arya, did I?
All right. Thank you so much, Sushant, for your response. Dr. Amrita, who would you like to ask the question to?
Thanks, Aryan. I think I'd like to ask Professor Sudha. I think, Professor, you actually talked about the idea of acceptance, which is something very close to my heart. And that is the toughest bit, you know. When it's change, that's also about acceptance. And when you're comparing, you talked about comparing between different children, different people. That also somewhere is about. So how do you create that? How do you, as a parent, create that around you? And how do you, as a school, what would you recommend create that around for everybody? She's on mute.
You're on mute.
Ma'am, you're on mute.
We take such pleasure in telling.
Okay. Thank you for that question, Amrita. And it is a difficult thing to accept, but it can be done. It requires intervention at various stages. And if since I have a child who is on the spectrum disorder uh, thing, it makes it even more difficult as a mother to accept first, then the family members, then the siblings, and then the school. Now, there is something called inclusion, which we all know as educators. And even there, we find that there are some teachers who are very sensitive, some teachers who are not sensitive. So we need to have those sensitivity, workshops, I guess, that will lead to a lot of things. First, it will be a family workshop, then it has to be family and school together. And I think that can impart a lot of knowledge, because when I teach in college today, I still have students who have dyslexia, dysgraphica, and all those kinds of disabilities. And sometimes I know that they are they're looked at differently from other class members. And that is when I feel that, okay, guys, this is how they are. We need to accept it for what they are. We need to accept them for who they are. And the question of medication, there's some who are on medication, and that can also do it. So in India, we have always had this question of, bringing about emotional stability and practice of meditation and yoga and all that kind of thing. And in schools, I seriously feel that the sensitivity thing is something that we need to really work on, be it teachers, be it parents. Because some of the parents can pass on very caustic remarks, and I know how much that hurts. And I know how some teachers are very, so this sensitivity, emotional sensitivity has to be brought in. And I think that's the way to develop acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Sudha. Who would you like to ask your question to? This is the last question.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. And as I said, since Amrita asked me the question, I also wanted to ask her a question on the question of cognitive understanding, which you did mention as a part of it. Now, how do we explain that part to people? Because people all think that they're very intelligent and very smart and they know a lot of things. So that cognitive space is something I find very difficult to venture into as a educator. If I tell the parent that, there's probably something wrong. No, everything is right with my daughter. Or if I tell the kid, probably, why don't you look at it this way? No, that's the way my mom treats me. Or my dad treats me. So there is that conflict. So when we are looking at cognition, how do you think that's going to happen?
See, I think it's about really, again, you also said for acceptance, it's important to have those sensitization workshops. Similarly, when we talk of cognition, again, the understanding that people have when it comes to cognition is at the very, very basic level. It is still understood just as knowledge, just as thinking, just as understanding, which is the lowest of the levels. And I think since ages as educators, we've been talking about Bloom's taxonomy, and now with digital literacy and this new system that we are all, so there's a whole digital pedagogy. So everywhere, we do need to move beyond that to the higher order thinking skills. And therefore, it's no longer just thinking and cognition, it is critical thinking, it is creative thinking, it is no longer thinking bound by a certain subject boundary, it's multi-dimensional, multidisciplinary, and not just multi, sometimes interdisciplinary, and sometimes going beyond that, or STEM or stream, and so on and so forth. So the more experiences that we build around learning, it cannot be that you expect the child to read from a textbook, learn from a textbook, and blurt it out, and then expect them to develop creativity. That won't happen. So when they experience, that's when they really learn. After that, they could express it in different ways, whether in writing or in speech, or in the form of a role play, or whichever way. Again, that choice is very important for the child to have. And therefore, that transformation or that reimagining of the education system is very, very necessary. The other thing very key is there is no one truth ever. So there are so many perspectives to everything that we may understand. So we may understand it one way, but there's somebody else's truth which is very different from this. So it's very important to develop that. And so what works is that, okay, I understood this, but then what next? Little bit of goal setting for me. What more can I do? Reflecting on that, building that into the very system of learning and growing. So that goal setting, reflection, reflective practice, and building that growth mindset within each child, each parent, each teacher. Basically, every stakeholder that's part of also the leader, every stakeholder that's part of the entire education process. That's very key, because we can never be there. It's a journey. It'll continue. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vohra. So, thank you all for asking each other these questions and making the discussion more engaging. Now we move on to the next level, next round, where I would be asking you questions. So, since we are running short of time, so I request all of the panelists to be mindful of the time and be as brief as possible. So my first question is to Dr. Dr. Rosina. So, what are the challenges in bringing around, say, parents to be able to, like, work with the child in cases where, like, the parents are extremely busy owing to their work life? So how can one, like, work around this busy schedule? Even in the pandemic, a lot of parents are occupied with, like, the work that they're doing. So what are the ways in which parents can like, engage with the kids?
One of the things that I've been working with families with in Australia is what I call flexible routines and schedules, because we can't be too strict right now. But getting the whole family together, getting the whole family buy-in, sitting down together and talking about the situation of, your needs are that we get your learning done. Our needs are that I get my work done. We need to work together. And that's why I love our program is called Win-Win Parenting. It's got to be good for kids and good for parents. So how can we do it in a way that's a win for the kids and a win for the parents? Now, one of the things that we've talked about is actually having good routines. Even very young children can get themselves dressed and ready in the morning if they've got pictures, take the pajamas off, make the bed, those things. So you can start from tiny. Older children can have lists of tasks to do. And then all together, we all have to be ready in the kitchen at 8 o'clock for breakfast, straight after breakfast, all together we clean up. And then there can be a work period. There's also needs to be, as I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm not sure which panel member said it, but the importance of physical and mental and, healthy eating, exercise, including that. So I think the key is working together as a family collaboratively, setting it out in a flexible routine so everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. And when it's time for parents to work, if they spend a little bit of time setting up activities for the children, whether they're very young or teenagers, then they're going to be in a better position without the mum, dad, mum, dad, every 5 minutes if they've put the time into setting up the support.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosina. My next question is to Arya. Since you've been working with Parents Association and parents across Europe, what are the top 5 elements of fostering a healthy relationship between school leaders and parents towards transforming education? So, what would you consider as 5 really, really crucial elements?
Actually, the most crucial element was mentioned by Professor Sudha. It's communication. It's communication and communication and communication. And basically it's talking. So what we always recommend to parents is once your child starts going to a setting, whether it's a kindergarten or a creche or a school or whatever it is, to start establishing a good relation from day one. To talk to the teacher, to talk to the educators, to get to know the people that are dealing with your child so that they can get to know you and your family and maybe your family routines and habits and so on. So that you both have a clear picture of what is going on. Of course, that gets more difficult when children advance in school systems, because then they might have 10 or 15 teachers and the teacher might have 100 students, and they cannot always keep track of everyone. But the better that relationship is from the very beginning, the less issues there are usually afterwards. Because in most cases, you will be informed or you will notice if something is going wrong much quicker than if there's no relation. Usually, I mean, there's a saying in German, when the child has already fallen into the fountain, then it's already too late. You want to know about issues, problems, difficult moments from the very start. Then you can still intervene and do something without this being a huge conflict, a huge issue. Yeah. If you haven't got that communication, if you haven't got that relationship well established, then it will be very difficult to establish anything in a conflicted situation. I mean, Sushant mentioned very well that if you talk to different groups, they will give you different pictures of exactly the same situation. And you have to bring them together to talk about it. If you have a good talking platform and a good basis of communication already before, then that is not an issue. Then you can talk about sensitive issues, critical problems as well. If you haven't got that and you start talking to each other when you're already in a critical situation, it's like in a family, you know, if you never talk to each other and then you start to talk about something that's really worrying everybody, then it will be more difficult.
Thank you so much, Arya. So my next question is to Professor Sudha. Professor, if you have to say in a minute, what are the strategies or tips you would give to parents parents of students who experience some form of some form of challenge in their lives during the pandemic? So what are the things that you would suggest for care by parents?
Okay, now I'm going to bring in a universal truth. We all have our own problems. We all have certain, what you may call handicaps. Okay? Some of us may have, we feel strongly on visual, some of us are strong on audio, some of us are strong on both. So, or some of us are strong in explaining the whole thing in writing. But the most important thing is everybody has handicaps. Now the first thing is to respect that handicap, number one. Number two, we always need to keep ourselves occupied with something and to engage a child or engage a person who has a difficulty, to engage that person differently. If the person wants to be left alone, leave them alone. You want them to do something else, let them do, but never force anybody to do it. So the major part is to accept, oh, other people are doing it, you're not able to do it. No, it's fine. But each person, even on a spectrum disorder, works differently because they have their own handicaps, they have their own advantages, they have their own drawbacks. So that is something that we need to do. So the parents first need to identify what are the strengths. Secondly, give them that work accordingly. Secondly, you have to understand where are they weak, and if you can support that weakness by giving some kind of external support, that will take them through. Third is to actually sit down and talk. That's very important. What is it that the problem that you're facing? And last but not the least, like Dr. Rosina said, we give them something, some mindful activity for them to do so that they are at peace and we are at peace with ourselves. And there is universal peace around the world. And the last thing I want to say is if you have a problem, don't hesitate to talk to a counselor. That helps because you can counsel as a family, you can counsel as an individual, you can counsel with the person who has a problem. And I think that takes a long way because at least you're able to understand whether you're on the right track or whether you're making a mistake somewhere. Because all of us, some of it works by trial and error. So we don't know how to handle certain situations. And like I appreciate the fact that what everybody has accepted that the only thing constant is change. So somewhere, if you cannot change the world, you change yourself. And when you change yourself, you also feel that the world has changed. I think that's the biggest key to anybody having any problem. I can never say that there is no problem with anybody. All of us have our handicaps, all of us have our drawbacks. And I very often find my children saying that, oh, I wish I had a different mother. I said, fine, let's go look for one. So that will bring about the change that we always are looking at. And I think all of us as educators have seen that, oh, I wish I had a different teacher, I wish I had a different mom, I wish I had a different dad, I don't like my sibling. But for everything, we need to understand that there is something that is irritating them. Get that irritation out, and I think that will be a safe place.
Thank you so much, Professor. Sushant, the question is to you. You have been working with parents across the country, whether it's in the rural areas or in the urban areas. The question is more precisely to do with remote areas. So, what would be effective methods for parents in remote areas to educate their children, given that, I mean, say like, you have issues with technology, you have issues on multiple fronts. So, what did you suggest?
Here, a couple of things. One, we need to somehow reach out because I don't think so. So what has happened is that somewhere there's been a dichotomy between education and life. I don't know where it came about, but that's where it is. So we look at education separate from life. But if you really pull up any book, okay, any book of any subject, and let me just take an example of social sciences. So I'm taking an example if these parents are, say, for example, in a remote village. Does that village is facing some current problem? Put the pandemic aside, but do they have a problem? Could they have a problem of, say, um, growing some stuff, or electricity, or water shortage, or cleanliness, or whatever? So rather than looking at a book to teach, can children and parents or whatever the people can come together and really make a difference out there? I think if they do, they will use their communication skills, which is language. They will use their mathematical skills because they will have to figure out something or the other which could do with numbers or calculations or measuring something. And they will come together as a community. And that is what their civics is all about, their social science is all about. So if, for example, somewhere I was just thinking, if you can make some short videos, because these ideas may not come to those people, but if like, I would be very keen to do that. The only way is if we can get somehow to reach these videos. This could be 2-3 minute videos. These can reach them out. You don't even need connectivity for it. It only needs a 2-minute, 3-minute video of an idea of a project. In that project with the children and across the age group can do it together. So a child who's 5 to a child who's 10 to a child who's 15, they can all be a part of that team. So one, they will learn their education, no doubt about it. Second, they build that huge connection, because what academics, what education is all about life. There is no dichotomy between life and education. It's one. Somewhere I think I would say we educationists have actually somewhere broken it up, and then we are trying to fix it up again. But life and education was always the same. It was always the same. So these could be certain methods which should, one, get them educated, get them in reality of that education, and actually make a difference on the ground. And the other thing which we are all worried about, specifically parents in this current times, is that children aren't going to school. They don't have anything to do. They're getting bored. There's tons to do out there. They can make a real difference in wherever they are. So I think that could be one of the ideas. And this can cut across villages, tribal areas, urban areas, anywhere.
Thank you so much, Sushant, for your response. Dr. Amrita, the toughest question to you. So, all right, so this question is to do with the role of parental pressure as well as societal pressure on the quality of education. Because I'll give you the context. You're both an educator and you have been a leading educationist. So you understand the challenges on both sides of the aisle, right? So if you look at the context, many a times, whether it's like, the thing with online classes or otherwise, the push and pull factor that you face based on the pressure, how much of it affects the quality of delivering the kind of education that you'd like to offer? Does it even have impact, any impact?
I think it depends on if it had impact, honestly, schools wouldn't have survived. It was already a lot of pressure, as I think right at the beginning of today's session, Sushant pointed out that as educators, we were thrown into the deep end and asked to swim, and then also take the children with us and the parents with us. So yes, there has been so much pressure from all ends, and it was not familiar territory. In fact, it is more familiar territory for children. Every generation, as I always say, is smarter than the previous one. They're already smarter and they are digital natives in this case. This platform is theirs. They are native to it, while the teachers are actually learning. So the only way I think the teachers have found to tackle the pressure is somewhere get the children along and make them the mentors. Some bit of role reversal has taken place in certain ways, because children have started supporting also the teachers. Okay, you could do this, you could do this. Oh, ma'am, you've gone on mute, and so on. So while there are, I mean, children will be children, they will do their, they will have their pranks to play as well. So that is dealt with. But there are also the positive sides of it where they are taking responsibility. They realize, okay, this is it. This is what we're here to do. There is pressure, yes, but from the parents' perspective, I would say one thing. I mean, to put it like this: let's not make parenting a vanity project. Either we end up appreciating the child too much, or being way too involved in the child's life, and you're helicopter parenting sometimes. That is not going to help the child. Parenting really needs to be, we as parents need to be situational, like situational leaders. So you need to be out there, you need to know what's going on, but stay out of the way. Ensure everything's fine from the outside, but stay out of the way. Block anything that could be a deterrent, could be a disturbance, and let the expert do their job. That is very key from a parent's roles perspective. And from the teachers, again, don't try to impress anybody. Don't try to impress the child, don't try to impress the parent. School also, um, school is whatever the teachers do. So don't try to impress, right? Just express what you feel. That is key. Communication, as everybody's said, is the key. And the other is just keep on helping with some degree of motivation. Where are we going wrong? What is it? Let's be critical of what we're doing. Let's try to find solutions together. And that is what I think works well. And every time, this is important to find solutions. And that's why the pressures, are sidelined, and you're still able to move forward with a good learning environment.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amrita. One reason why I had asked you this question was also because if you look at policy, even in India, up to grade 8, you can throw all the books away and do whatever you want to. Still, 99.99% schools, like, have heavy bags even today, when, like, you have a light bag policy. So that was the context in which I asked this question. So my request to all parents who are watching this: please know that the pressures that you put, that might not even be visible, get translated into either doing good or harm to your child. So you need to be reflective of how you perceive academic learning and success. So I think that is really crucial. That I personally have felt it, because I ask educators, uh, why exactly don't you work around, you have such a progressive space where up to grade 8 you can do whatever you want to. So that is one thing. Thank you so much, Dr. Amrita, for being so frank around it. So now we move on to the next round of the entire panel discussion, where we have audience questions. So there is one question that's directed to Dr. Vohra: how parents could help their children even if they are not at home the whole day. This question, I think, has been answered with Dr. Rosina. So I would move on to the next question. I'm sorry about that. You can add on. Yes, yes, absolutely.
So I completely agree with what Rosina's already said. I'll just add this one thing, that the ethic of care is what the parent is all about. That there is a difference between the role of us. So we don't, as a parent, you're not expected to teach your child, but you are expected to find that little time, despite a busy schedule, as Rosina said, that flexible, to talk to the child, to share with the child, and to encourage. Just three, we call it the 3 a day approach. Just do these three things every day. Just talk to your child. You could talk about anything, and share what's going on within you. Anything that's, you need a friend. You're the first friend and the most important one for your child, and encourage. Their child is also, we're all in constant need of encouragement. You'll get a lot of encouragement from your child too, I bet.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amrita. I think we have Sarmishta Basu. Please unmute yourself and you can ask the question directly to any of the panelists.
So, Mr. You're still muted.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to ask one question. Here the parents are spending the time. I'm from Karimnagar, Explorica Premium School. So parents are cooperating, but they are thinking it as a burden. How to remove this ideology from their mindset? It's an opportunity, you as well said by all. It's an opportunity by all. That pandemic is there. We need to grow. We need to understand. So the same thing is applicable to the parents also. So I would just request Rosina ma'am, if you can kindly highlight on this.
Thank you so much for your question.
It's a fabulous question. It's a fabulous question. The first thing I ask parents is, before COVID, the most common word I heard from parents was, I wish I had more time for my children. I wish I had more time with my children. And now all of a sudden they do. And all of a sudden they don't want it. So I like to remind parents that we can either look at this situation in a negative sense and say, look at COVID, or we can say our wishes have been granted. We wanted more time with our children. We felt we were too busy at work. And now we've got this wonderful opportunity to get to know our child, to support them to be the best they can be in the world. And so I suggest to parents, why not create a journal? And what are the memories we're going to remember from this time in lockdown, this time together? Are they going to be negative memories, or are they going to be positive memories? And in this journal, can we take photos of the day, of the things that was fantastic today, where we learned something, we played together, we learned fractions and measurements while we made cupcakes, right? Or we cooked the dinner together. And so really it is very much about remembering that as a parent, we have this beautiful opportunity to spend time with our children, the gift that they are, and to create beautiful memories that hopefully when we look back on this time, we say we spent them together wisely.
Can I add something to that? So that's
Absolutely.
great. Thanks, Doctor. That's a perspective. But one thing which I wanted to talk to Ms. Basu was that feeling of burden. It's okay to be burdened. So that's all coming from that. Oh, I'm burdened, and there is something wrong with being burdened. Uh, has anybody in the world who's existing right now seen, heard, smelt something like this before? Never. So when you talk to experts, they have no idea how it's going to land up, how the world is going to show. We have no idea. So it's okay to be burdened. Can we take it for ourselves that it's when the parent says I'm burdened, can I not make it wrong? It is a burden. Yeah, I'm looking after my house. I'm doing the household chores. I'm working from home. A lot of people have lost their jobs. They're not putting their salaries in. The children are on their case. Everything is happening all together. We never used to handle it all. No, it's burden. Yes, it's okay. And yes, it's okay. First, can we acknowledge and make that burden okay? And then, as Rosina said, well, once that, so right now, the amount of energy and the amount of time I'm spending, my mental energies in just making that wrong right. Oh no, I don't need to be there. I'm saying just, can you put that facade side? You don't have to fight it. And I'm sure there'll be a huge release of energies. And whatever Rosina said today, if you can just use that energy to do what she's saying, it'll be really phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. Step one, accept the situation where it is.
And it's perfectly fine. It's acceptance. It's not resignation. Sorry.
No, it's acceptance. That's how I feel. But do I want to stay in that feeling, or do I want to make it different? Absolutely. I think you make a really good point. Thank you, Sushant.
Thank you so much, Sushant and Dr. Rosina. I have this question that Arambika has asked. It's a very interesting question. Two shades to this. What can be done to make parents understand that it's even their responsibility to shape their kids' future and not only that of the school and the teacher, and that teachers also have a private life, and even we are troubled during these times. So Arya, if you can take this question, and then Dr. Amrita, you can add.
Well, thank you. Yes, that's definitely true. I mean, people have found out that now the parents are in charge 24 hours of the day, but also teachers have been working many more hours than they used to because internet connections were not stable. They had to accommodate to children's possibilities to access the internet, maybe sometimes in the afternoon and not in the morning and things like that. So that's why I'm saying we are all, and I think it has been mentioned at different stages, we're all in this together, and it needs, as Rosina said, this certain flexibility in order to make this work. If we do not, if everybody sticks to, oh no, my hour of math is from, I don't know, 10 to 11, and otherwise I won't be available, it's just not going to work. That's very simple. And I think that needs a lot of learning from many people. Yeah. And I think it's good for our children also to see that the parents are learning, that the teachers are learning, that, as has already been said, nobody has been in this before. Yeah. I have a friend who was asked how she was dealing with her twins and the elderly child at home and homeschooling and home office and so on. And how did this feel in comparison to what she had experienced before? And her simple answer was, I don't know, this is my first pandemic, you know? So I think we have all been surprised by this event, and we're trying to make the most of it. And I think there's a lot of mutual learning that takes place. And I think that especially parents' associations at a school or also at regional or national level can help make this work better. Yeah, we have all learned from the mistakes that have been made in the beginning. I mean, Now we are talking about the reopening of schools in September. Some of the things that didn't go well in the beginning of the pandemic have been changed. Schools now have to say which platform the whole school will be working with, because people found themselves with, I don't know how many different teachers, different platforms, different ways to get their homework, different tasks being given to children. There was no coordination. Some children were completely overwhelmed with the tasks that they got. Others were bored because they did not get anything from their teachers. So there was no coordination and cooperation. And I think this has this understanding of that we need to work all together to make this work in the best possible way for the children, that has gone through, and that hopefully in the next round we will deal better with it. Yeah, we all hope that children can go back to school, but I'm pretty sure that certain blended learning will have to take place, because there might be infections again, classes might have to be closed, or a certain fluctuation in the school will be necessary. So I think that this will have to happen, and I also think it's a good thing, because you can bring in so many more things through the blended learning that you did not have access to in the presential instruction. Which, yeah, I mean, everything has inconvenience and advantages. Let's take care and use the advantages. I mean, we'll have to live with the inconvenience anyway.
Thank you so much, Arya. Dr. Amrita.
Well, so Arya has really explained it well. So I'll just add a very simple thing to it. I think at the crux of it is mutual respect. Parents do need to respect teachers and the school system. And similarly, the school system and the teachers need to respect parents. And just empathy is at the center. We have to empathize with each other. We are all in this together, and everybody is suffering. Everybody's got their own set of challenges to deal with. Let's just empathize genuinely with each other and have some essential agreements. What really helps is communication and essential agreements that we arrive at together right from the beginning, so that everybody knows what's going to happen, how, why, what's the rationale, and we've reached an agreement, and we'll go by it, and that works well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vohra.
Aryan, I just want to add something here.
Sure, please do.
We've talked about how teachers have to have an understanding with the parents. We've also talked about how we need to understand the children. But I think in today's homes, many homes across the world, the primary understanding between parents is very important. Because unless they come to a common ground, people will not understand where they're coming from. Especially when it comes to education, there are a lot of things that we need to understand, and they need to come to a common ground. Once they have convinced themselves, they can convince the child. And once they have convinced the child, they can talk to the teacher in a very systematic manner. Again, it is communication, I understand, but the primary thing I find today, and there is a lot, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think I should bring it up in this session, but there is also a lot of domestic violence that has happened during the pandemic, which has affected people in a very, very different way. And that when the child is exposed to that kind of domestic violence, it disturbs the child somewhere. So it needs to, domestic violence is not only the husband and the wife, it can be another child hitting another child, or a child hitting a mother, or any of these things. So somewhere, I think the fundamental step for a secure education is the understanding within the family, whichever be the family size, the understanding within the family. And then we take that forward between the parents and the teachers. I mean, this is fundamentally what I feel, because today when I see the real world, I find children coming from different kinds of family backgrounds. Some of them with single parents, some of them divorced, some of them coming away from their homes and studying. And it is not easy, because as Dr. Rosina said, and as well as what Arya said, and what Amrita ma'am said. I don't want to leave Sushant sir, but that is not what he spoke about. But everywhere we need to understand that, mental health, emotional well-being, and physical well-being together constitute what we call as the happiness quotient. And that, I think, is the most important key for happiness anywhere, be it at home, be it in school, be it at work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, and thank you, everybody. I mean, we are towards the end. There are too many questions still that need to be answered. Now is a point where we highlight some of the audiences. So, special mention to Kevin Hevitson. He spoke about relationships first, learning second. If you can't reach them, you can't teach them. Building effective learning relationships is an essential first step. So this is what Kevin says. So thank you for sparking the discussion, Kevin. We really appreciate your contribution. We have Dr. Sanjoy Bhattacharjee, and this is what he has to say. He says, we started offering online classes in the month of April when no school in our vicinity thought about it. Since then, it has been a wonderful journey, a great harmony amongst children, parents, and facilitators. I observed few changes during the transition from physical classes to online classes, and he lists 5 of them. Children develop their sense of creativity and self-motivated nature. Online education increased the number of surprising innovations from both students and facilitators. Public-private educational relationship has developed. Technology became widely accepted and used. Teaching learning became completely student-centric and activity-based. And finally, parents became more involved in teaching and learning process than ever before. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Dr. Sanjoy. The next person who we would like to highlight is Monica Popley. She talks about the pandemic. She talks about this, that the pandemic has brought extraordinary challenges and has affected education sectors, and no one knows when this will end it. So you all have that sense of despair. But also she talks about while online classes have existed since long before the pandemic, they have served a different purpose, giving learners access to modules and subjects they would not have otherwise in physical classrooms. So this pandemic has made these online classes primary source of education for students. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the same. And finally, the last highlight for the day that we want to share is that of Kavita Rajendran. And Kavita has to say this from perspective of parent. The child who likes self-learning in this pandemic has resulted in helping them enjoy being interactive in calls with teachers, while also enabling through quiz apps, which is good. On the flip side, she says that the child is seated in a single place or with a computer or mobile with the same posture, which could have issues that are to do with their physical well-being. So these were some of the thoughts that some of the participants have shared. Now we go on to the very exciting segment where we ask a very practical question to all our panelists, and they get exactly 1 minute to respond to this. And the question is, what are 3 things parents should and shouldn't do to accelerate transforming education for human flourishing? So we begin with Arya, and then Arya can tag whoever she wants to go next.
All right, thank you very much for this possibility. So when it comes to the 3 things that parents should do, I mean, we have been talking a lot about the what, and the other question actually is about the how things can be changed and how parents can be part of this transformational process even more. As I've explained before, systems are very different, so it's difficult to say something on a very general basis that fits all the context, but I'll try. So first of all, parents need to reflect on their own schooling, which very often has been characterized by deficit culture, always pointing out mistakes and failures rather than underlining positive results. And I think this mind shift is absolutely necessary, without falling into the other extreme of my child is perfect and it can't do any wrong. I think that has been mentioned also. Secondly, parents should cooperate with teachers and educators or other school staff, which means establishing a culture of trust and mutual understanding for each other's role and responsibilities. Knowing what happens at the educational setting will really help to intervene when things are not clear or when there's a problem, but then you can do that on a better basis. And the third thing that they should do is communicate with other parents, whether it's at class level, within the Parents Association, Parent-Teacher Association, through participation in the school board, or any other organizational forms that will largely depend on the structure in each country. Yeah, here we see lots of possibilities, and there's a huge potential to learn from each other. We do these peer learning sessions through our school visits and study visits, with our conferences that the European Parents Association normally organizes twice a year. What we should not do and what should be avoided, I think that has also been mentioned before. Blaming teachers or other school staff if things don't change the way you would like or as fast as you would wish. Transformation is a process and it takes time, goodwill, engagement, and it is hard work in the end. So trying to be supportive and finding out whether there's a problem and how it can be solved might be more helpful and more appreciated. Another thing that we should absolutely avoid is making unrealistic requests. Parents should have a vision for the future, but keep to the demands that can be put into practice, and go for the vision step by step. Transformation means taking little steps to change something big and not create frustration by unrealistic demands. And last but not least is avoiding perfectionism. That has already been mentioned before. Nobody's perfect. And as a matter of fact, there's no perfect way to achieve a goal, and there are no perfect goals either. So things keep changing, and you need to adapt and shape your pathway and adapt your objectives, because something that is perfectly reasonable today might not make any sense shortly afterwards. I think in this respect, COVID-19 has taught all of us an impressive lessons. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arya. Who would you like to tag next?
Dr. Amrita, please.
Thanks, Arya. And Arya's really been comprehensive about this and actually said it all. So,
Sorry.
I'll just quickly add my 2 bits. So, as I said earlier, talk, share, and courage, that's very key every day. So that quality, genuine time with your child every day. And I completely agree with Kevin. So I've put it in here. Relationships first, learning later. And empathy, relationships between children, parents, teachers, everybody, knowing each other, supporting each other, being there for each other, that comes first, and that will really help us build that resilience and social emotional intelligence that is really at the base of helping them or nurturing them for life, preparing them for life. And the third, last but not the least, is move away from the obsession with marks and that system that's pass. Even our national education policy in India is talking about it now, and has been since the last year. CBSE, our largest board, is talking about it now. So as parents, accept that change, move away from that, let your child evolve in a new system which requires new competencies and new skills. Let them develop that. This pandemic is a wonderful opportunity where they've already begun.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amrita. So who would you like to tag next?
Okay.
I'm actually curious to know.
Who is it? Dr. Rosina.
Thank you. Again, every time it makes it harder to add something new. These are such wonderful points. But I hope I can add something new. I read an article by, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Yong Zhao, and it was it said COVID-19 as a catalyst for educational change. And the words he used were reimagining education. Now, I love that. So as a parent, what should we do? What could we do? The yeses. Take the moment to reimagine what I want my child to learn, how I want my child to learn, where I want my child to learn. Perhaps, you know, the what is more life skills than just mathematics, or, you know, the how could be a combination of online and face-to-face. You know, the where, in my home, where they're safe, and at school, in online forums around the whole world to meet different children, different experiences. And then the what not to do, and I wish I did it the other way around because I like ending on the positive. But anyway, let's see how we go. First thing is not to forget self-care. That is the foundation. We've already said it. Physical, emotional, spiritual. Don't forget that. So don't forget that. Do it. Second one is don't forget to say thank you. I wrote to our principal at our school and I just said, thank you for the communication, for the new courses, for the care that you're showing. And it broke my heart to hear her say that was the first thank you she got. It was all negative. It's not enough, and etc. So please thank your children, thank your teachers, thank yourself for doing well. Exactly as Sushant mentioned earlier, accept and thank. And then the final one, we have don't forget to appreciate all of the wonderful things in our life. It is sad, yes, many things are sad, but there are so many more wonderful things. So don't forget that. And I feel very blessed being here today and listening to this wonderful discussion. So thank you. I want to say thank you and not forget a thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosina. Who would you like to ask a question to?
I would like to ask Sushant to share his beautiful points, and I really want to acknowledge and be so grateful for his reminder to me that we accept before we change.
So thanks, Rosina. So for me, everybody, it's not about it. So education and life come together. So it's not about education separately and life separately. And this is a great opportunity to really make it happen for our children with them at home together. So a few things which I find parents making mistakes. Like generally, if I ask you the three biggest mistakes that the parents are making during this pandemic, I just want to highlight them. And that is not about education. That's about real life education. That's what competencies are for. So the first one is like that the whole belief system that our children are having fun during pandemic. They're not stressed. They're okay. So if you find them sleeping late, getting up late, not wanting to get into the classrooms, not wanting to support household chores and sitting in front of gadgets and spending their time, we feel that they're having fun. That's not fun. That's not vacation. 4 months of that bundle of energy with exposure to so much of online content, online sexual content, online bullying, which is happening, it's gone out of the roof. So we as parents first need to realize that our children are not having fun. And right, as I said earlier, give them the space to share without advising, without saying don't do that. Like give them a space to talk it out so that you can really know what's happening in their world. It's not easy. I'm telling you, if you rate your stress and anxiety at X, I can promise you our children are at 100X. I'm not saying 100X just to scare you. That's the truth. So we've been working with children for long now, and we know what kind of stress they're going through. So give them that space. The second thing which they're making a mistake is like all parents are suddenly right now saying there should be a routine. You should get up on time. You should sleep on time. You should do this on time. So it's great. Routines are great for life. They give you a huge space. They give you a whole lot of energy. But let's acknowledge what they are going through and what you're going through is not normal. We don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to handle it. So rather than being fussy about routines, can we be fussy about relationships? Can we build that relationship? Just notice how many times do you go to your child's room and say, do this, don't do this. Just count the number of times somebody's instructing them. And imagine if you were being instructed by 5 adults in a house, what to do and what not to do every 10 minutes of your life for 4 months. It's not easy. So can we stop doing that? Can we stop the routine? Can we connect? Can we really connect? Can we utilize this time as everybody was saying? It's a time to be. We've never had so much of time with them. Can we thank God and really say, fine, man, we may never have a time like this ever in our lifetime.
Absolutely.
Whether it is your own children, whether it is your own parents, whoever it is, whether it is you and your spouse, you've never had some time. So can we acknowledge that and really utilize that? And third thing, again, very critical one is,
Sushant, please wrap up quick because
sorry, quick
I
one. So one thing which I really wanted to say to parents was, children come to you, all of you, saying, I'm bored. So I'm saying it to you here straight on your face. Your job is not to entertain them. Getting bored is a great space. All thinking, all creativity, all inventions, whatever has happened in the history of mankind has happened when humans were bored. So it's a great space. If they are bored, celebrate it and let them find their own ways. It's not your job. Because when you make it your job, then you're stressed. So give it to them and let them be bored, find their own ways. I can promise you there'll be thousands of inventions they will do during these times.
thank you so much, Sushant, and sorry for interrupting you because
It's perfectly
in the
fine.
interest of
I know.
So finally, Dr. Sudha, right?
Yeah. So
I'm
I
sorry.
got to tag her and there's nobody else to. So we save the best for the last, right?
Thank you, Sister Sushant, for all those kind words. We need to live in the present. I am not going to talk about what you're not going to do. I'm going to talk about what you should do. I think that's the positive thing we need to take away with us. We live in the present. There are problems, but all problems have solutions. It's not that everything cannot be resolved. There is nothing, even COVID will go away one day. Then what are we going to talk about? There are so many solutions to COVID-19. COVID-19 may take another avatar later, but then it's gone now, right? So we always need to understand that every problem has a solution. And there, in fact, there can be multiple solutions. It's like, I teach consumer behavior, and I always say that when you go to buy something, you have enough choices. Take your choice and take it the right way. And as Mr. Sushant said, education has to be made more fun. I mean, we can do so many things, like when you're cutting a vegetable, probably you're cutting something and you can, if your kid is small, we always have that thing where you dip the vegetable and color and make it something. So there's so many fancy things you can do. You can actually have a shop perhaps at the end of the thing and sell those goods and actually show them what entrepreneurship is. So it is very, very important, apart from self-care. Yes, I agree. And thank you, all of you, for making it so enriching, because I can take a lot of things home and talk about it. But I only want to say one thing: accept whatever is there. Always be positive. Don't blame somebody else. No, the only person you can blame is yourself. So be prepared for the change. It will take time. Yes, we always start with that. I know. And there are alternatives. There is no one definite solution because we have the trial and error. Whatever fits, fits well. So I think we need to understand that education goes beyond books. Education is not books. Education is not just that. Education is basic values, happiness, mental peace, how to understand situations, how to get out of a conflict, how to be creative, how to be smart, how to have a play of words, and in a good sense. Anyway, thank you, Aryan. Sorry if I extended the time. Thank you so much.
All right. I'm uh, thankful to all of you for having shared. So these are my conclusion remarks. As you all know, this is a moment for us to shape intentional and inclusive policies and nurturing practices. All of this towards creating an ecosystem that is truly empathetic, compassionate, mindful, and fosters a space for all teachers, parents, and students to grow and thrive. Like our panelists spoke about, parents being equal partners in the success of children, educators, parents, and school leaders, all, I truly believe, have both the power and potential to affect this positive transformation. I understand that we are running out of time and we still have a lot of questions that we may not be that we may not have been able to cover or answer them sufficiently through this panel discussion. And we look forward to hearing from you your thoughts, ideas, suggestions on how we can empower parents in pursuit of transforming education for human flourishing. Please send me an email or tag us in your posts on social, and I'd be delighted to know more from you. Also, do suggest what you'd like our future discussions to be on. Our next panel discussion is on the 28th of August at 5:30 p.m. India time, that is GMT plus 5.5, and we'll be discussing the question, can educators lead the decade of action for SDGs? And I thank you all for sharing such amazing ideas and your feedback. We have tried improving the entire format. So thank you so much for the feedback and suggestion. On behalf of the Global Citizenship Foundation and the Council for Global Citizenship Education and all our attendees, I extend my deepest gratitude to all our panelists for taking out the time out of their busy schedules and enriching this discourse through their amazing ideas, insights, and experiences. Also, I thank you for being a part of the OELF family and for everything you've been doing to advance this discourse on transforming education for human flourishing. See you soon. Until then, take care, stay safe, and spread love and compassion. Our world needs it more. So I'm sharing with all of you this paper form. So please fill in this form to receive your certificate of participation and more so to add value to the entire discourse that we are having. So if you are seeing all the changes that you see right from session 1 to now, you see that all of the changes that we have brought are thanks to your feedback and suggestion. So I thank you all. Stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sushant, Dr. Rosina, Professor Sudha, Arya, and Dr. Amrita. You've been phenomenal and inspiring. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Aryan.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
It was
you,
great.
and have a good time. See you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity. It's been lovely to meet you all. Thank you.
Same here.
And
It was a
let's
great
stay
meeting. Thank you. Yes, let's keep in
I'll,
touch.
I'll, send,
Definitely.
I'll send a trail mail so that all of you are in touch. So we also have a reunion with all
Thank
other panelists. So I'll share the details with you. So take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Aryan. All
I
the best.
love that.
Thank